Hello guys, we are back in new fanfic, and if enjoying this then please share and like. Let's start the fanfic. Lady Tsunade. Shizune called out. The busted blonde-haired woman spun her chair and faced her assistant. What is it, Shizune? He's back. The Hokage's eyes widened. Then what are you waiting for? Bring him in. Yes, Lady Tsunade. Shizune replied, as she left the office and went to go get the man that her master wanted to see. In the main streets of Konoha, the man that Tsunade was looking for was just walking around. He has wild spiky blonde hair, tan skin with 3 whisker marks on each side of his face. Of course you all know whom I'm talking about, it's none other than Naruto. He was wearing a red coat with black flaming designs on the bottom of it and had a large summoning scroll on his back. The smell of hot fresh ramen was soaring through the air, and once it caught its target, Naruto came to a halt and inhaled the smell of it. He looked to his right and saw his favorite place to eat of all times, Ichiraku's ramen. His body started to move on its own since the smell of the ramen was basically dragging him over to the stand. Shortly after, his body stopped reacting on its own, and then he realized that he was standing in front of one of his favorite places, Ichiraku's ramen. He shook his head and walked in. "Welcome, customer," Tsuki yelled, but once he saw who it was he resorted his volume. "Hey Gramps," Naruto replied. "Naruto, welcome back. What will it be today?" "The usual," he answered, as a big smile crept upon his face. "Coming right up," Tsuki said, as he made his way to the back. "Hey Gramps," Naruto yelled so that he could hear him. "Yes, where's Ayame?" "Oh, she'll be here shortly. I'm sure she would be glad to see you." "Oh," he crossed his arms and placed them on the counter, as he rested his head on them. "Dad, I'm here," a feminine voice called out. Naruto shot up and spun in his chair to see the brunette girl that he had asked about earlier. The two of them were frozen, as they stared at one another. "Ayame," Naruto nearly shouted a bit too loud. "Naruto." She tilted her head a bit to realize the new appearance that he was wearing and then looked back up at his eyes, but she saw that usual big goofy smile of his before locking her gaze into his eyes. "Naruto." She threw herself at him and wrapped her arms around him tightly. Naruto did the same and wrapped his arms around her waist. They both rested their foreheads against one another and looked each other in the eye. "It's been some time since you've came and visit," Ayame said. Naruto chuckled slightly. "I'm sorry. I've just been caught up with my training." "So I heard." She leaned in closer to him, as her lips began to quiver. Both of them could feel their faces warm up due to the space between them closing slowly. "Well, I see that you two have missed each other a lot." A shade of red appeared on their faces and instantly darkened, as they turned to see Tsuki behind the counter with Naruto's meal. The two separated themselves, as Ayame made her way to the back with a blush still shading her face. Naruto sat down trying to hide his blush from the old man. "You know it's okay to do whatever you need with her in front of me. She is my daughter after all, and I'm happy that you two care for each other a lot." The shade of red on the boy's face darkened after hearing what the old man just said. Don't think that. "Oh, calm down, Naruto boy, I'm just messing with you," Tsuki said, cutting Naruto off. Naruto simply nodded, still keeping his head down low, preventing the old man to see his blush. He grabbed a pair of chopsticks and started devouring his ramen. 20 minutes later, Naruto sat straight up taking a deep breath. "So, how was it?" Tsuki asked. "They were all good," Naruto said, as he rubbed his belly since he ended up eating 10 bowls. Tsuki chuckled, as Ayame couldn't help but just giggle seeing how that Naruto hasn't changed at all when it comes to ramen. Naruto reached into his back pocket searching for his little frog wallet. Tsuki and Ayame realized what he was doing till Tsuki just smiled. "Don't worry about it, Naruto, it's on the house this time." Naruto shot his head back to face the two. "Really? Yeah, you go off now. I'm sure your friends want to see you." "Ah, thanks Gramps." He hopped off of his seat and instantly ran out of the stand. "I thought that I would find you here," a feminine voice said. Naruto looked to his right and saw Shizune coming up to him. Hey Shizune. He smiled. Lady Tsunade wants to see you. Right now? Yes. Okay. Naruto and Shizune started making their way to the Hokage's office, but little did he know that something was waiting for him there. Just outside of Konoha, a group of shady characters all wearing black cloaks with red clouds on them were walking through the forest of Konoha. One of them had orange spiky hair with purple eyes resembling the Rinnegan. 5 others of the group had the same colored hair, but in different styles along with the same eyes. One of them had a mask that was orange with multiple layers and he had black spiky hair similar to the other 6. The last one had a womanly figure. She had shoulder-length blue hair with a large light blue flower in her hair. She had amber-colored eyes with marine eyeshadow. We're just about there. The masked character said. Good. Once we've captured the 9 tails, that just leaves the 8 tails. The orange spiky-haired figure replied. Yeah, but he'll be more of a problem since he can manage to control his Jinchuriki. The woman mentioned. That would be a problem. Even if we were to work as a team against it, we would still hardly manage to pull it off. And with Itachi gone, that just makes things worse. One other thing too, the host of the 8 tails brother is the Raikage, which makes it even more difficult. Then once we capture the 9 tails, we'll just use it against the 8 tails. Once we've captured the 8 tails and take it, we'll then take the 9 tails after. The masked figure mentioned. Wouldn't that be too much? Jinchuriki against Jinchuriki? The woman asked. Well, there's 2 possible ways. It could lead to the destruction of the Cloud Village if those 2 end up fighting with their all. If it does, then the Raikage will have no choice but to jump in and try to bring them down, which will lead to his death, making our job much easier. If that doesn't turn out like that, then that'll mean that the 8 tails and the Raikage will work together to kill the 9 tails. Either way, those 2 will end up tiring themselves out and that's when we come in. Well, now that you mention something like that, we can use the 9 tails for some other purposes. What are you thinking of? The masked one asked. Well, we could have it take care of Kabuto since he's starting to pick up Orochimaru's traits and also have it take care of Danzo for us. I guess that'll work, but there's one problem, Madara. Pain said. And what is that? The 9 tails has been searching for Sasuke Uchiha ever since his departure of the Leaf Village. When we bring the 9 tails in, what should we do with Sasuke? I say we just keep them from seeing each other and not let them know that the other one is here. No, Conan, I have a better idea. Madara said, as an evil grin crept upon him behind his mask. Tsunade was standing behind her desk looking out the window and watched everyone just roaming around the village. A knock was heard at the door, which quickly drew her attention away from the window. Come in. The door opened to reveal Shizune with Naruto right behind her. Once Shizune shifted to the side, Naruto could see that Tsunade wasn't the only one in the room. Instead, he saw most of his friends in here. His eyes widened seeing how he was having a big welcome coming from them. Welcome back, Naruto. They all shouted, as they all crowded around him. Whoa, I was only gone for about a month. There's no need for a big welcome. He tried to protest against them, but was overpowered. He felt a tug on his coat and looked to his left to see Ino staring at it. What's with the coat? She asked. Yeah, what's with this new look all of a sudden? Shikamaru asked. It was just a part of my training. Naruto looked around and realized that Sakura wasn't even here. It was shocking since she would always be there for whenever he would return from wherever it was he went to. Where's Sakura? He asked. Everyone just grinned seeing how he was mainly wondering where she was. Why do you ask? Ino asked. A blush came upon his face. Naruto. Everyone smiled and backed up from him, as he turned around to see Sakura standing at the door. Sakura. She walked up to him and just when she got close enough, she instantly wrapped her arms around him tightly. They both rested their chins on each other's shoulder. Naruto's eyes were widened from her sudden action. It was rare for her to do this to him and it would always throw him completely off guard. I missed you, Naruto. I missed Lady Hokage. Everyone turned their attention to the doorway and saw an Anbu standing there breathing heavily. What is it? We have intruders, Lady Hokage. It's the Akatsuki. Everyone's eyes shot wide. I'm going. This will give me a chance to test my new training, Naruto said, as he gently moved Sakura away from him. I'll come too, Shikamaru said, as he ran after him. Lady Tsunade? Sakura asked, as they all turned to face her. Let's go. Naruto. Wait up, Shikamaru shouted. Naruto kept jumping from rooftop to rooftop, as the main entrance was just at his reach. He jumped off the last rooftop and down to the ground. Well, it looks like the Nine Tails came to us instead. Naruto turned to the voice to see a group of 8. His eyes widened, not believing that there was so many, but then his brain just on remembering what Jiraiya's message was. So, you must be the one who killed Jiraiya-sensei. Pain glared at him. Yes. Naruto gritted his teeth and kept holding himself back from recklessly charging in after them. But, we're not here to fight. What? Naruto asked. We came here to negotiate a little. You either come with us or this village will be completely obliterated. Madara said. Naruto's eyes remained wide, as his body then jumped on its own, slightly hearing that the village would be completely destroyed if he refused. Naruto. The Akatsuki members looked behind the Jinchuriki to see a few others joining in with him. They ignored them though and looked back at Naruto. So, what will it be? Naruto's friends looked at him, curious of what occurred before they could even get here. What are they talking about, Naruto? Shikamaru asked. Sadly though, his body didn't function and prevented him from answering his friends. However, his body slowly walked towards to the Madara and the others, but then stopped in the middle between them and his friends. This training turned out to be for nothing. I can't even protect them now, I can't even save Sasuke. He turned to face his friends with a sad and hurt expression on his face. It was starting to truly hurt him now, having to say goodbye forever to them and that he'll never see them again. Naruto. What are they talking about? Sakura shouted. Naruto. Lee shouted. Naruto, get over here. Tsunade yelled. Naruto closed his eyes and shook his head slowly. I don't want to be the reason of everyone's death. What are you talking about? Shikamaru asked. If I don't go with them, the village will be destroyed and I don't want to be the reason for that. Don't you dare go with them, Naruto. We can handle them, Tsunade shouted. Madara chuckled behind his mask. Tsunade, one of the legendary Sannin. Apparently you don't know who I am. The masked person walked forward and stopped next to Naruto, while placing his hand on the boy's shoulder. I don't care who you are. You're not taking Naruto. Madara just sighed. I guess this mask is always trouble to people who don't know who I really am. However, your village wouldn't stand a chance against me alone. Who are you then? Tsunade asked. Madara Uchiha. Tsunade's body took a step back on its own, as her eyes widened. Wait, you can't be him, he's dead. Oh. Madara grabbed his mask and simply removed it to show his face. Tsunade's eyes widened, seeing those Sharingan eyes and his black spiky hair. Anyway, we'll be on our way. Madara went behind Naruto and elbowed him on the pressure point of his neck, which knocked him unconscious. He quickly picked Naruto up and threw him over his shoulder. He turned his back to the Leaf Village and walked over to his teammates. Let's go. And in a flash, they all vanished. Sakura dropped to her knees and remained looking where Naruto last stood before he was gone. Tears escaped her eyes and slowly slid down her cheeks. Ino could see how much Sakura was really hurting and decided to sit down next to her. Sakura, I know how you feel and I feel the same way too, but we can't help it. He left on his own to save us. We need to warn the other villages and the council. Tsunade mentioned. Deep within Konoha Forest, the Akatsuki decided to come to a halt for a brief second to rest a little. I want you to take Naruto in with you. Madara said. What for? Pain asked. Because I have a lot of things to take care of on my own. And plus, there should be a room for him to stay there. Not exactly, we've only kept 3 rooms and that's it. You should know, one's for Nagato and another one's for the 6 of us. And the last one's for Conan. I see. Well, he's still going with you. Fine, but don't expect him to end up staying inside. I may just have him stay outside as if he was a dog. Whatever, but one other thing. Tomorrow, I want you to tell him that he's a part of us now. All right. Madara tossed Naruto's unconscious body over to Pain, in which he placed the boy's body over his own shoulder. Get going, Madara ordered, in which they all vanished going their own separate ways. Location: Rain Village, Nagato's base. Conan and the Six Paths came to the main room of their base, as the main leader of the Six Paths tossed Naruto onto the floor. A pair of eyes opened slowly, but the vision was blurry at first. Once they opened to its full potential, they could see 6 people with orange hair, but with different styles for each of them. They shifted to the side to see a woman with them too. Once the owner of those pair of eyes finally remembered, he sat straight up and realized that they were the Akatsuki. Naruto looked around to realize that there was furniture all around the place. He was confused at this since he thought that they were going to extract the 9 tails from him and leave him behind to lie there dead. Apparently he thought wrong, as he shook his head to erase the thoughts. Where am I? You don't need to worry about that. Pain answered. Why am I alive? I thought that you were going to take the fox out of me, leaving me dead. Not quite. The leader wants you alive. I'd rather just die. Pain just chuckled. That's what I thought as well. He thought. Pain, it's getting late. Conan mentioned. Yeah, you're right. Him and the other 5 walked out of the main room and down the hall, leaving the 2 behind. Conan just watched them leave and then turned to face Naruto, who was getting up to his feet. It's best you get some rest. You'll need it for tomorrow, she mentioned, as she turned her back to him and walked off. Hey, wait, where am I supposed to sleep? Conan stopped and turned to face him. Don't expect me to let him stay inside. I may just let him stay outside as if he was a dog. After remembering what Pain had mentioned earlier to Madara, she started to feel a little bad that he would have to end up outside. You can stay with me, she said. Naruto's body jumped, as a dark crimson shade came upon his face. Wah, what? Conan rolled her eyes. I said you can stay with me in my room. Are you sure? Conan shook her head, having to see what he was really thinking. Are you coming or not? If not, you can just stay outside. Okay. He walked over to her, as she walked off slightly ahead of him so that he could follow. Conan. Right. Why are you being nice to me? Let's just say, what I heard of where you would have slept just sounded a bit too much. Where was I going to be if I didn't come with you? Outside when it never stops raining. Never stops raining. He stopped, which caused Conan to turn to face him. So, that means we're in the Rain Village. Yes, I see, so I am far away from my village. Conan rolled her eyes again, since she was getting tired of the delays to reach her room, since she was getting tired enough as it is. She quickly grabbed his hand and made him walk with her at a fast pace. Naruto's steps couldn't keep up with her since she practically caught him off guard. Shortly, his next step gave out on him and caused him to trip and fall. However, Conan didn't let that stop her, and now she was practically dragging him to her room. Hey, ouch. Carpet burn, carpet burn. Conan just kept dragging the boy, and since he couldn't see her face, she simply giggled slightly at him. Finally, after what seemed forever, they reached Conan's room. She stopped in front of the door and let go of Naruto's hand, which caused the rest of his body to fall, but ended up falling face first. She turned the knob and gently pushed the door open. She turned around and looked down at the boy. Do you plan on staying there overnight? Naruto rose the same arm up that Conan had held to bring him here and then quickly got back up to his feet. Sorry. She grabbed him by the hand again and led him into her room. She then closed the door behind them and locked it. She looked at Naruto, who was just examining her room. It was as if it was a master's bedroom. The walls were painted blue like her hair. The bed was a king size, but looked like it could be even bigger. To the side of him, there were 2 other rooms. One was the bathroom and then the one right next to it was none other than the closet. He looked to his left to see a massive window with blue curtains and white flower designs on them. Below the bottom part of the window was a plain white window seat. Wow, was all he could say. I'm going to go change, she said, as she walked to the closet. She pulled the door once she was in, but little did she know that the door didn't close all the way. Naruto took a couple steps forward, just taking in the look of her room. He wasn't used to anything like this. Usually the only time he had been in a room like this was if Yamato built it with his wood style. He looked to his right and saw Konan unzipping her cloak. His face was completely red once she removed her cloak. Underneath her cloak was a scanty robe with a large hemline on the front, which exposed her arms, her back, the lateral part of her and her belly. Naruto then pinched his nose to prevent himself from having a nosebleed and instantly shut his eyes tight. His instincts took over though, as his eyes opened slowly and saw that Konan was down to her undergarments, which consisted of a purple-colored bra and Brazilian thong, which showed her incredible buttocks curves. Naruto's eyes widened at the sight, as he couldn't take it anymore. Blood started to leak out of his nose, as he then quickly ran to the bathroom. Once he got to his destination, his eyes shot wide open. The sight he was seeing was amazing. The bathroom was incredibly huge. To his left there was a long countertop with 2 sinks and a mirror in front of it. At the end of the long countertop was the toilet itself. Then, to his right was a glass window square-shaped shower. It was big enough to fit about 5 people inside. Followed up was a bathtub with a few switches that could turn it into a jacuzzi. Wow! Suddenly, his nose stopped bleeding, as he walked in more and looked around. He decided to stop next to the tub and wondered if Konan would let him relax in it, but then dirty thoughts of him and Konan came upon his mind. He was imagining Konan on top of him, while their bodies were under the warm and soothing water with only their heads out of it. He was picturing Konan on top of him and kissing him wildly, while riding him at the same time. Of course these thoughts would get to him after seeing and hearing what pervy sage would usually do around woman. Slowly, that has started picking up on him, taking it after his master. What are you doing? Naruto nearly jumped, as he turned around to see Konan standing there in a small purple tank top that showed her belly. She also wore a pair of purple short shorts that nearly hugged her frame and showed off her curves. His eyes were completely wide, as his face started to heat up. He instantly turned his back to her. I'm just looking around. Konan rolled her eyes and turned her back to him, as she walked out of the bathroom. It's best you get to bed. Naruto turned around to realize that she was back in her room and getting in bed. He decided to finally leave the bathroom and back to her room. He looked around realizing that there was nowhere for him to sleep. Where am I supposed to sleep? Oh, right. Konan got back out of bed and went back to the closet. Shortly after, she came back out with a few blankets that were folded up. She stopped next to him and looked at him. Here. She tossed the blankets at him, which caused him to take a step back once he caught them. Thanks. Konan went back to her bed and just sat there waiting on him to finish. Naruto unfolded the first blanket a couple of times and laid it on the ground. It was thick enough to give him something comfortable to lay on. He unfolded the next one, but decided to use it as covers. Once finished, he looked down at it and was thinking that something was missing. Konan just looked at him wondering if he was that dumb knowing that he was missing a pillow. She grabbed the pillow that was next to her and chunked it at him, which ended up hitting him on the head and caused him to fall on his side. Naruto just lied there with the pillow covering his head. Konan saw what the hit caused and couldn't help but giggle slightly. Finally, Naruto grabbed the pillow and moved it to the end of his little pallet. Are you finished down there? Konan asked. Naruto got back up to his feet, not looking in her direction. Yeah. Konan smiled, finally being able to get some sleep, but just as she reached for the lamp, she saw him unzipping his jacket. He then withdrew his arms from the sleeves and tossed his jacket to the side. Next, He grabbed the bottom of his black shirt and quickly removed it and tossed it with his jacket. Conan's face was the one to heat up this time after seeing his well-muscular toned figure. After all that training he's been going through all the years had really had an effect on him. Will you look at that? Conan's inner self started talking. Shut it. Just look at him, that amazing body of his is worth keeping him alive after all. Just imagine what he would look like with no clothing at all. Conan's face warmed up even more. I said shut it. I wonder how big he is. I'm out. Conan then left her mind not wanting to hear what her inner self had to say anymore. She shook her head to clear her thoughts and looked back at Naruto. Her face was now completely red since Naruto was just standing there in his boxers. Naruto now laid himself down on his pallet and pulled the sheets over him. He folded his arms behind his head and lied down against his pillow, while looking up at the ceiling. Since he was now out of Conan's sight, she decided to reach for the lamp and turned it off. She recovered back into her bed and rested her head on her pillow. Naruto, on the other hand, just lied there staring at where the ceiling would be. I'm sorry everyone, I failed to find peace. A single tear slowly slid down his cheek. I especially failed you, pervy sage. He whispered to himself, but Conan heard every word and felt terrible for him. It made her feel that way after all. Jiraiya was her sensei too, but not just her, Nagato and Yahiko as well. It especially hurt her more when she helped Pain kill their sensei. She remembered how that Jiraiya was seeking peace for the world and passed it down to Nagato that day. Now, since she heard that he had passed it down to Naruto, it was just sad to hear. She knew it couldn't be helped and closed her eyes, as she drifted off into a slumber. Morning. Conan kept tossing around in her bed due to her emotions getting all mixed up. On one side, she was feeling satisfied and proud that they finally captured the Nine Tails. However, she was also feeling sad for the boy since they took him from his village and that he failed Jiraiya's promise that was set to him. She couldn't take it anymore and just sat straight up. Removing the sheets off herself, she then turned herself and planted her feet on the ground. She got out of bed and walked to the front of her bed to see that the blonde-haired boy was still asleep. A smile formed on her face, as she sat down on her knees behind his pillow. She lowered her upper body and positioned her face just above his, nearly a couple inches from his. A groan came from the boy, as his body turned side to side, but then went back to lying on his back. His eyes slowly opened and could see that there was something in front of his sight. He couldn't quite tell since his eyes were still blurry, as his eyes were trying to adjust themselves. Shortly after, his sight came into focus and could see Conan's face right there just nearly touching his. His eyes shot wide open and his body shot itself up on its own. Conan's eyes widened seeing how when Naruto's body shot himself up caused him to plant his lips onto hers. Their faces were completely red from Naruto's contact, but their minds were completely off, forgetting that they were still kissing each other. After what seemed like a long time, Naruto pulled himself away and lay his head back down on the pillow. They were still beet red, but Conan was too into it and was disappointed he pulled away. I'm sorry, he said. Don't be. A knock came at her door. Conan. Is the Nine Tails in there with you? Pain shouted. Conan rolled her eyes and got back up to her feet. Yes. Get ready and bring him with you when you're done. I'll be waiting here. All right. Naruto looked up at her, curious of what they were going to do with him. Conan looked down at him. Get dressed. I need a shirt. Conan thought for a second, but remembered that today would be when they welcome him to the organization. You won't need it, just put some pants on. She made her way to the closet getting another set of clothing. Naruto tossed the sheets off him and got up to his feet. He grabbed the same pair of pants that he wore yesterday and quickly put them on. He decided to sit on the foot of Conan's bed and waited for her. After a short period of time, Conan came out of the closet with her Akatsuki cloak on. She looked over at Naruto and just as she did, her face started to heat up. No matter how many times she would always see him without his shirt on, it always would make her blush. Just look at him. Sitting on your bed with no shirt on. Just go over there and take him, drive him crazy over you. Would you shut up? Conan's inner self couldn't help but laugh. Don't worry, when the time comes, I'll take over and just eat him up for you. Conan left her mind and shook her head. Let's go, she said, as she stopped in front of the door. Naruto nodded and walked up to her. Once she opened the door, Pain, the main one out of the six, was right there on the other side with an Akatsuki cloak in his hand. Conan held the door open, as Naruto walked out first and the Conan right behind him. She closed the door and decided to lean against it. Here, Pain said, as he tossed the cloak at Naruto. The blonde-haired boy caught it and looked at Pain curiously. I'll explain, Conan said, while Naruto turned to face her. We decided to let you live, but you have to become one of us. Naruto remained silent, but didn't have anything against it. He bowed his head and slid his arms through the sleeves. He grabbed the zipper of the cloak and zipped it up to cover his entire body. Lifting his head, he looked at Conan and then turned around to face Pain. Good. Now, today you'll go on your first mission alone. What's the mission? Your mission is to bring me the 8 tails. Naruto's eyes widened after hearing that he would have to end up fighting a fellow Jinchuriki. And don't fail like Pain, Conan shouted. Naruto turned to face her, curious of what was with the sudden outburst. Oh, right. Just don't fail. Naruto turned back around to face him. Where exactly is the 8 tails? The hidden cloud village. But, don't worry about the travel there. Pain reached into his cloak's pocket and pulled out a slip of paper. This will take you to the village. How will that take me to the village? Madara was the one who created it by adding his teleportation jutsu into it so that we could use it for easy traveling. I see, but why do I have to do it alone? Doesn't the Akatsuki work in a pair? Yes, but you can simply measure out against the 8 tails since you possess the 9 tails. I see, I'm just basically being used. Pain grinned. Yes. Conan on the other hand didn't like hearing that. Her eyes softened, feeling bad for the boy. Suddenly, a great big flash appeared. She looked at where it came from and realized that it was the slip of paper that Pain had gave to Naruto. Once the flash died down, Naruto was gone. Nagato, are you sure he can handle on his own? Conan asked. Of course, after all, he has the most powerful Jinchuriki out of them all. Location: Cloud Village. A bright flash appeared just above a building and within it, a body came falling out of it. The flash cleared to reveal Naruto standing on top of the building. Completely unaware of him, he was standing on top of the Raikage's building. Inside, Raikage. The tall, dark-skinned man rose out of his seat. He was a massive figure with a large muscular build, white hair, a small mustache and beard. His top lip also has a darker hue than the bottom one. There's an intruder in the village. Darui said. What? Who is it? It's the Akatsuki. Whaat. Where? Darui looked up at the ceiling and when he did, the Raikage jumped up, breaking through it and made his way to the roof. Back outside, Naruto stood on top of the building with his arms crossed and looked down at the water and other buildings that were scattered throughout the village. So, this is the Cloud Village. I wonder where the 8 tails that Pain was talking about is. Naruto scanned the view before him and then closed his eyes. He shot his eyes open and revealed his sage mode. He had yellow irises, horizontal bar-like pupils, and the reddish-orange pigment mark of a true sage on each eye. Where could you be? He scanned more to the left and picked up a massive amount of chakra behind a couple of mountains. Found you. Just as he was about to take off toward the location of that chakra, the roof busted to chunks. He turned around to see the Raikage coming up from inside the building. Naruto could see the hatred and killing instinct in his face. The Raikage growled out in anger and charged at Naruto. I won't let you Akatsuki take my brother. Naruto quickly jumped back a bit, as the Raikage slammed his fist on the roof, which caused another hole to appear. Naruto looked around and couldn't find the wreckage anywhere due to the dust cloud from the collision. He took a step back, but could feel that half of his foot didn't land on anything. He looked back and saw that he was standing at the edge of the roof. Down below where he was standing is narrow river paths with a lot of mountains all over the place. I have you now, Akatsuki scum. Naruto looked back and saw the wreckage coming right at him. Something was different though, his whole body was as if he was wearing lightning armor. Naruto just grinned and took one last step back. The wreckage gasped and stopped his attack, as he realized that step that Naruto took caused him to fall off the building. He walked to the edge and looked down to realize that he was nowhere to be seen. Damn it! Elsewhere. Naruto was running on the water heading over to where his senses told him where exactly the Eight Tails is. I should be. A giant tentacle came from around a mountain and slammed down at the water in front of Naruto. The blonde-haired boy immediately stopped and just stood there watching the tentacle slowly sink into the water. He looked up to see a giant octopus come around the mountain. It was brown with wide white-colored eyes and the octopus was incredibly huge. Yo, I knew that I sensed someone. And to think that it would be the Akatsuki, I knew you would come. The giant octopus said. So, you're the Eight Tails? Naruto asked. Yeah, I see. You need to come with me. Like hell I will. The octopus swung one of its tentacles at the blonde-haired boy. Naruto simply dodged it and smirked. I think it's funny to see you in your Eight Tails state to fight me. Why not start in a normal fight? Fine. The octopus reverted back into its original form. He was a dark-skinned figure possessing a muscular build, as well as white hair and a goatee. He also wore a pair of oval-shaped sunglasses and a white-colored forehead protector. He also wears a white-colored one-strap over one-shoulder flak jacket, with a red rope tied around his waist. He also wore hand and shin guards, shinobi sandals, a white scarf around his neck, and had two swords attached to his back. The name's Killer Bee. The blonde-haired boy just smirked. I'm Naruto Uzumaki. Killer Bee mimicked the boy with his own smirk and charged at Naruto with incredible speed. Naruto's head twitched to the sudden movement from Bee. Bee appeared behind the blonde-haired boy, but Naruto sensed it and spun around to block a punch from the silver-haired man. Bee then backflipped and once he landed on his feet, he shot himself as if he was bullet being shot from a gun right at him. Naruto's eyes shot wide open, as Bee held his fist just inches away from the boy's face. Location: Leaf Village. Lady Tsunade. Shizune called out, as she came running into the office. What is it? The busted blonde woman asked. Shizune stopped in front of Tsunade's desk and held out a letter. Tsunade took the letter, as she opened it and began reading it. After a short time passed, her eyes widened once she saw what it was about. What is it, Lady Tsunade? There's a meeting requiring all 5 cages at the Land of Iron. What for? It's about the Akatsuki. One of the mountains around the area of where the 2 Jinchurikis are fighting collapsed due to Naruto being slammed against it. You damn Akatsuki scum will die here. Bee yelled, as he charged at where Naruto is. Naruto came out of the crater that was created in the mountain by him and rubbed his head. He then looked up to see Bee with red chakra forming around him. Once the chakra became stable, he was now in the Jinchuriki's cloak. Bee then slammed his fist against Naruto's cheek, causing him to go straight through the chunks of the collapsing mountain and straight into the water. Naruto reacted quickly, pulled himself together and swam back for the surface. However, a tentacle wrapped around his body and kept him from swimming any further. He looked down to see a giant ox-like octopus below him. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out a kunai and stabbed the tentacle. Sadly though it was no good, as the octopus squeezed harder around the blonde-haired boy. There's no escape, you scum. The giant octopus shouted and squeezed harder. Naruto was struggling and holding onto his breath trying to break free. When it came to the point he couldn't hold his breath any longer, he let out his last breath as his body went limp. You're pathetic, kid. Is this all you have? Stay out of this, fox. No, you're done. You're facing the 8 tails and it's just making me all jumpy about it. I'm taking over. Naruto's eyes shot open, but they weren't his normal blue eyes, but instead they were red. His body was being surrounded by an enormous amount and yet out of control red chakra. His skin shattered off his body to reveal that he was now completely covered in his blood mixed with the Jinchuriki's chakra and showed 4 tails. Yo, what is this? The giant octopus asked. The miniature 9-tails fox lifted its head and let out deep and loud growl. It quickly withdrew its arm and swung down, cutting the tentacle in half. The miniature fox wrapped its arms and legs to its body. It then separated them and released a powerful shockwave, which caused the water to split open. Damn it! The octopus shouted. The 4-tailed fox launched itself to the air, as the ox-like octopus resorted itself on top of the water. B looked up to see the miniature fox diving straight down after him. He attempted to grab it with his tentacles, but the fox ended up slicing a couple of them into pieces. Shit! The fox was closing in quickly, but a dark figure appeared in front of it with his body surrounded by lightning. He punched the fox smack across the face to send it flying back into a mountain. B looked closely and realized who it was. Brother. This is no time for chatting, B. We need to take that Akatsuki scum out. A shouted. They both turned their attention to the mountain and saw the fox coming out slowly. However, the fox was getting mad and released another shockwave of its chakra, which caused the mountain to crumble to pieces. B examined closely and realized something coming out of the fox's body. Brother. I know. A replied. What they were seeing was 2 more tails coming out of the fox's body, and that wasn't just it. The bones from its body began to form out of the intense chakra around its body, attached to the body with several thick chakra ligaments. However, green chakra started flowing out of its chest and began wrapping all over its body. A seal? B asked. The fox let out growls of annoyance trying to break free from the green chakra. Instead, it reached into its chest to pull out the necklace that Naruto had won in a bet against Tsunade a few years back. It held up the necklace and glared at it, while letting out continuous low growls. Without wasting any more time, the fox instantly crushed the necklace into pieces. He broke the seal? I asked. The fox then lowered itself and slowly landed on top of the water with its tails waving around slowly. Brother. He's coming. B shouted, as his tentacles started to regenerate. The Raikage decided to take action before it did and instantly charged after the fox. The Jinchuriki took a step and then vanished out of A's sight. The Raikage came to a halt and scanned his surroundings. Brother. B shouted, as it turned around to see the fox coming up to him. B quickly shot one of his tentacles at the fox and quickly wrapped it around the fox. However, that didn't stop the 6-tailed form fox, as it sliced its way out of the grip. Instead of going after A, the fox turned to face the giant ox-like octopus and charged at it. B sent 2 more of his tentacles at the fox and wrapped them around the fox. The fox struggled trying to break free, but then it stopped and just glared at the ox-like octopus. It then opened its mouth and shot small chakra blasts right at the giant octopus. Gah! The blasts from the fox beast didn't quite hurt as much since B was remaining in his tailed beast form, but it did end up blinding his sight for a short time. B. A shouted. B looked around until his senses picked up and looked up to see the fox coming down at him. A quickly jumped up to the fox and kneed the fox, followed up by a powerful punch, which caused the fox to slam into another mountain. B turned his giant octopus form around and looked at where the fox was. He saw that the fox was coming out slowly and opened his giant ox-like mouth. This is it, scum. B shouted, as he shot out a yellow chakra blast from his mouth. Right when the blast made impact on the fox, a massive explosion cleared the area of where it was. Did it work? I asked. They both kept their attention to where they last remember seeing the fox and waited for the smoke to clear. B looked even closer and saw red tail-shaped chakra waving around. Shortly though, more were becoming visible. 6. The smoke cleared. 8. Why is he changing so fast? B wondered. B. We need to end this now. A shouted. That's right, entrust your life with me and I'll easily take care of these two. I've already taken over. Now, let me have full access. The Kyuubi said. The seal that was on Naruto's stomach began to weaken. Naruto was just standing a few feet away from the front of the cage with his eyes completely red. Suddenly, his body started to move on its own and walked toward the cage. He stopped right in front of the cage, as the water started rising him up. Shortly after, the water stopped and Naruto was now in front of the seal that was placed on the cage. Naruto's right arm lifted up on its own and grabbed the top edge of the seal. Yes, now peel it right off so I can have complete control. Naruto slowly peeled a small amount of it off till someone tackled him down back to the ground. Naruto shook his head and his eyes turned back into his normal blue ones. He looked up to see that he wasn't alone. He saw a bright blue-eyed and spiky blonde-haired man standing in front of him. He had jaw-length bangs framing either side of his face. He was wearing a standard Konoha nin uniform with 2 bands each on both of his sleeves, a flak jacket, and a forehead protector. Over that, he wore a short-sleeved long white coat decorated by flames-like motifs on the edges. He saw that the man had his back facing Naruto and that the man was looking up at the glaring red eyes behind the cage. Naruto looked at his back and noticed the inscription on the back of his coat. Naruto's eyes widened once he finished reading, "You're the 4th Hokage." Back with A and B. The 2 brothers remained where they were to see that the now 8-tailed form was coming right at them. The 8 tails form was just as big as the regular 9 tails. However, it had yet to reveal its skin and fur, but it basically only had its muscle tissue to be seen along with the 8 tails. The fox opened its mouth and shot several chakra blasts at the ox-like octopus. B didn't have enough time to dodge them all, as all the blasts made impact on him. B. Shouted, as he turned around to face the giant fox coming at them. The fox waved its head around and then focused down at A and shot several chakra blasts down at him. He quickly jumped up avoiding them all and looked to see what was in front of him, which was the fox. The fox bowed its head and then shot it up, which hit A and sent him flying back. The fox let out a loud growl, but then tentacles started wrap around the fox's body. The fox turned its head to see the 8 tails B. The fox tried to make a run before it had a good grip on it, but B wrapped the rest of his tentacles around the fox's legs. The fox's tails whipped around and stroked at the octopus, but it didn't do much at all. B opened his large ox-like mouth and began to charge up another chakra blast. Suddenly there was a great big bright flash, which covered the fox. B stopped his attack. "What's going on? I'm pretty disappointed of you, son." The 4th Hokage said. "Son? Yes, I'm Minato Namikaze Uzumaki. Your Fom." Naruto had just punched his father along the jawline with anger flowing through his mind. "My father. How come you sealed the 9 tails in me then? Do you even have any idea what I went through my young childhood years?" Minato rubbed his jaw and looked at his son. "Yes, I've watched through your very own eyes. Then how come you were never there for me? Why didn't you help me?" "Because, well, let me explain." Naruto gritted his teeth till his dad spoke. "The truth is I'm not really living. The day I sealed the 9 tails in you, I ended up sealing myself as well when it came to where you were losing control. And well, here I am and boy am I glad to be here. My son has really grown up just like me," Minato said, as he gave the same exact smile that Naruto would usually make. Naruto had nothing to say still. "But, there's one thing on my mind, son. I can see that you joined the Akatsuki. Why are you helping them?" "To protect the village and everyone I care about." Minato cupped his chin and rubbed it. "I see. You do realize though, since you're in the Akatsuki's hands, they'll just end up killing you once they achieve their goal." "But no, you said you're doing this to protect the village and yet, when the Akatsuki gets a hold of the remaining tailed beasts, the village will just suffer regardless." Naruto's eyes softened and his gaze turned to the ground. However, He was brought out of that phase, as he felt a hand on his shoulder. He looked up to see his father there looking at him with a serious expression. Son, I'm glad to see that you've grown and became a fine man. But, you need to think about what you're doing here. Naruto looked at his father with the same expression he was getting from him, till he felt the urge to smile, in which he slowly did. I will, Dad, he said with joy in his words. Good, now, he was cut short when he realized that his son wrapped his arms around his father in a tight embrace. Minato just smiled and returned the hug, feeling happy that he actually got to see his son grow into a man after the years. Minato pulled himself away, which caused Naruto to. I will replace the seal, but next time this happens, try your hardest to withstand it. Or, when the day comes, you could learn to control the Kyuubi's chakra and use it on your own will. Minato performed a few signs, and once he finished, his fingers were glowing with chakra. He placed his fingertips on the weakened seal that was on his son's stomach. He turned his fingers and closed the seal as if it was a doorknob. Once finished, there was now a newly formed seal on his stomach. Naruto looked down at the seal and smiled. He then looked back up to see that his father was gone. Instantly, tears escaped his eyes. Thank you, Dad. Back to reality. B had lost his grip, seeing that he wasn't holding onto anything now, but he couldn't quite see due to the flash that had occurred. It didn't take long though, since the flash had disappeared and it revealed Naruto standing on the water in his normal form. He controlled the 9 tails. B asked himself. Naruto was breathing heavily due to the significant damage from turning into the 9 tails. Die. Naruto looked up to see B charging up another chakra blast. He turned around to try and make a run for it, but it was a few yards away from the boy. A held out his right arm, as lightning shot out toward Naruto and quickly surrounded the poor boy. Naruto looked around and realized that there was no escape from the lightning prison, but then he looked at the giant octopus to see that B was just about done. Which he was. He shot an enormous chakra blast from his mouth and right at Naruto. The blonde-haired boy was starting to panic, trying to figure a way to avoid the blast, because he knew that there was no way he could live if he took the blast. Then it struck him. He smiled and stopped the chakra flow in his feet that was keeping him standing on the water and let himself drop underwater. Damn it! I shouted. The blast that B shot ended up breaking through the lightning prison and went toward his brother. He easily dodged though and just turned to watch the blast end up hitting another mountain. B resorted back to his normal form and just stood there looking around for the blonde-haired boy. Where did he go? The Raikage shouted at his brother. I don't know. B answered. From a far distance though, Naruto came out from under the water taking a deep breath due to how long he had to hold his breath underwater. He looked back to see the 2 guys looking around, but they were too far for them to realize him. He then added his chakra to his feet, as he climbed out of the water and stood on top of it. Naruto sighed in relief and then looked down at himself to realize that his cloak was torn in several spots. From his right shoulder to his left lung area, which revealed half of his well-toned chest, and his left sleeve was completely gone. A sharp pain came from his right shoulder and he quickly placed his left hand over it. He turned around to see that there was some land at a good distance from him. Without any complaining, he walked toward his destination. A few minutes later, Naruto took his first step on land and decided to keep going. Ahead of him, there was a forest with all sorts of creatures within it. However though, just as he was about to step inside the forest, he fell to his knees. His eyes shut close and he fell to the ground unconscious. A pair of amber-colored eyes looked down at the boy, as the person picked him up and disappeared in sheets of paper. Location: Konoha Village. Time skip: a week later. A lot of people within the Leaf Village have been acting completely different ever since Naruto was forced to leave the village and to go with the Akatsuki. Tsunade was sitting at her desk and had just finished her 7th bottle of sake. She tossed it to the ground with the rest of the bottles. Shizune was standing next to the door watching her master drinking like a mad woman. Sakura on the other hand has been ever so quiet since his dismissal. She was sitting on her bed and looking out her opened window. She really missed how he would always come to her and annoy her slightly. Sakura-chan. She looked up at the sky, as a single tear escaped both of her eyes and slid down her cheeks, remembering how he sounded. Basically all of Naruto's closest friends have been acting the opposite lately. Back with Tsunade. Shizune. The raven-haired woman shot her head up and looked at her master. Go find Kakashi so we can start heading to the cage summit. Tsunade ordered. Yes, Lady Tsunade. Location. Rain Village. Naruto slowly opened his eyes and blinked off the blur in his vision. He leaned up, but his body forced him back down due to the pain from the 9 tails. You shouldn't move quite yet. Naruto tilted his head to the left and saw Konan standing next to the bed. How did you? Easy. I used one of the tags that Madara made. Naruto positioned his head back the way it was and stared up at the ceiling. Why did you come for me? Because Madara doesn't want you dead, yet. Naruto squinted his eyes due to the sharp pains that kept coming and going in abdominal area. You should rest up. Naruto opened his eyes ignoring the pain. Why do you care? A nerve struck the blue-haired woman. Look, I may be a member of the Akatsuki, but it doesn't mean that I don't care about others. Well, that's not how I see it. Hell, not even the other people living now see. Shut up. Naruto instantly turned to face Konan and was shocked from her sudden outburst. You have no idea who I really am. You don't know anything about me, nor do you know anything about how I am. So why don't you get to know the person more before you start judging? Naruto was completely wide-eyed hearing this from a member of the Akatsuki. No, you know what? I should have just left you outside and never offered you to stay here. But just leave. Konan, a sheet of paper covered his mouth to prevent him from speaking any further. Leave now or I'll blow you to pieces. Naruto crossed his eyes to see the paper covering his mouth had a symbol on it. He realized that it was an exploding paper bomb that she could make it go off at any time. He blinked slowly, as he threw the covers off him. He leaned up, but the sharp pain struck him again. He instantly hovered his right hand over his abdominal area, trying to add a little pressure, hoping to reduce the pain. His eyes turned to look at her eyes. What he saw in her eyes was hatred, the kind of hatred that could get him killed. His body turned, as his feet landed on the ground. He then brought himself up finally and walked to the door, while trying to withstand the pain. He grabbed the doorknob and turned it, which he pulled to open it. Without looking back at the blue-haired woman, he just walked out and gently pulled the door behind him, as it closed slightly, but not all the way. Naruto kept his attention to the ground, as he walked down the hallway. What did you do? Naruto immediately looked up to see the leader of the 6 pains standing in front of him. I did nothing. If you hurt her at all, I will kill you where you stand. Naruto looked back down at the ground and walked past him. Since you're going where you belong, don't even think about escaping the village. Naruto stopped in his path, shocked to think that he would guess of what he was thinking. No matter how hard you try to escape this village, I'll always track you down within a second. After his ears absorbed hearing what he had to say, he continued walking down the hall to find the exit door that would lead him outside. Pain opened the door that led inside Konan's room and saw that she was standing next to her bed. What did that monster do to you? Konan looked to the source of the voice and saw Pain standing at her door. It's nothing, don't worry about it. Pain then looked back out the door and down the hall to see that the blonde-haired boy was completely gone. He then looked back at Konan. All right then, he'll just stay outside like we discussed. That's fine. By now, Naruto was outside and saw that it was still raining. He continued to walk since there was only one way to go, since there was a bridge right there when he left the base. He didn't go far though. He stopped in the middle of the bridge and turned to face the railing. He walked over to it and leaned over it, as he looked down at the water. No matter how hard you try to escape, there's no way out. He sighed, but then he saw some white hair floating on the water. Hair. He asked himself. Ah, Naruto. The blonde-haired boy to the source of the voice and saw Madara. I have something for you to do. What is it? Naruto hissed. I want you to go to the land of iron and spy in on the cage meeting. Cage meeting? Yes, it's when all 5 cages gather up and discuss at what's going on. However, I sent a team there to help back you up in case anything happens. All right, and just a warning, you may end up in a fight with the cages. I'm aware of that. Wait, why am I agreeing to doing this so easily? Naruto thought. Good. All of a sudden, Naruto's body started to twist as if he was being absorbed into a portal and was gone within a second. Madara grinned behind his mask. I just hope he doesn't run into Sasuke while he's there. The air in one of the hallways of the cage's summit started to twist and spin open. Just then, Naruto came out from the portal and landed on his feet, as the portal vanished. He carefully examined where he was and sensed that no one was close by. I wonder where the team is that Madara mentioned. He said to himself, as he walked down the hallway. So it's settled. Naruto looked around to try and pinpoint where the voice came from and then saw that it was in a room that was just a couple of yards from him. He quietly walked to the door and hid his chakra to make sure that he couldn't be sensed. He leaned to his side a bit and looked through the corner of his eyes and saw all the cages gathered together. He only knew Gaara, Tsunade, and since he had a fight with him not too long ago. However, the other 2 were unfamiliar with him. One of them was an old man with a size of 1.5 times his headpiece. He had facial features that include a triangular beard and a mustache with angular corners. He has a big red nose and thick rectangular-shaped eyebrows. The top of his head is completely bald, although he has some white hair at the back and sides of his head, the back of which is tied with a yellow ribbon into a topknot. He wore a unique green and yellow coat with a red collar. Underneath he wore a flak jacket that represented his village, Iwagakure. The other one was a beautiful woman in her 30s that has ankle-length, auburn hair styled into a herringbone pattern at the back, a top knot tied with a dark blue band, and with 4 bangs at the front. 2 of her bangs are short, with one covering her right eye, and 2 are long, crossing each other on her chest, just below her chin. She had beautiful emerald green eyes. She wore a long-sleeved dark blue dress that falls just below her knees. It seemed to be closed at the front with a zip, and is kept open on the front right side from the waist down. Her dress only covered up to the upper part of her arms and the underside of her. Underneath, she wore a mesh shirt that covers more of her upper body than her dress, but stops short of covering her shoulders and still leaves a sizable cleavage. She also wore shorts in the same color as her dress and, underneath those, mesh leggings reaching down over her knees. Around her waist, she also wore a belt with a pouch attached to the back on the left. Furthermore, she has high-heeled sandals and shin guards reaching up over her knees. She also wore dark blue polish on her fingers and toes, and dark blue-colored lips. Since the 9-tailed boy betrayed your village and joined the Akatsuki, and on top of that he tried to capture the 8 tails for them. If you engage him, you all are to execute him at once. Mifune said. I understand. Tsunade replied. Now, about Madara, we need to come to an alliance and work together to bring down the Akatsuki. Since the Hokage told me that Madara was willing to bring war if they didn't get the 9 tails, they're still going to bring a full-pledged war against us no matter what. So, that means we'll need a leader to set the right actions for whatever is to come. Mifune mentioned. All the cages looked at one another, and that will be the Hokage since their village is the strongest amongst them all. Mifune said. I don't have a problem with that. Mei said, as the other cages agreed. Naruto, still outside the room, could not believe what he was hearing. He was to be executed if found. No, he whispered to himself. What does this boy look like exactly? Mei asked. Tsunade turned to face her. He has wild blonde spiky hair, tan skin, and well built. He wears an orange and black jacket with orange pants. Although, since he's now a member of the Akatsuki, he's probably wearing the cloak. He is. You forget that B and I already fought him. A shouted. You know, now that I think of it. I have this strange feeling that we've been spied on. Onoki mentioned. Outside the room Naruto was shocked, but curious if the Tsuchikage was bluffing. He decided to stay like he was and continued to listen in on them. Everyone in the room started to stare at Onoki. You do. I don't sense anyone. A plant started to come out of the floor in the middle of the room, which drew everyone's attention. Shortly after, it finally came up to reveal a Venus flytrap plant. It opened up to show a person's head inside. Basically, the plant was a human itself, but then the plant-like person started to laugh like a madman. He's here. The nine-tailed Jinchuriki is here and will. The Raikage immediately jumped out from his seat and landed in front of the plant, as he grabbed the man's neck with both his hands. Where is he? Naruto's here. Gaara asked himself. The plant man just kept laughing. You'll have to find him yourself. The Raikage was getting annoyed and squeezed both his hands and ended up breaking the man's neck. All the bodyguards of the cages jumped down from their hiding spots and stood near their rightful cage. Lady Tsunade, Naruto is actually here. I sensed his presence just not too long ago. Shizune whispered into her master's ear. Where is he? Tsunade asked. He's right outside this room. Tsunade stood up, which drew everyone's attention. Naruto is a few floors below us. How do you know? The Raikage and Tsuchikage both asked. My assistant picked up his chakra presence not too long ago, so she claims. Tsunade answered. Then how come? Let's go. A shouted, as he jumped and broke through the floor and continued to make his own path there. The Tsuchikage just shook his head at the outbursting Raikage. Darui and Raikage's bodyguards jumped down to follow their leader. Onoki sighed and went after the Raikage, as did the Tsuchikage's bodyguards Akatsuki and Kuratsuchi as well. Tsunade sighed in relief, glad that they felt for it, and turned to face the cage. Gaara, come with me please. She said, as she walked toward the exit of the room with Shizune and Kakashi behind her. Gaara got up and followed them with Temari and Kankuro behind him. Mei, Mifune, Ao, and Chojuro just watched as they left, curious of what was going on. Naruto, which was still outside the hall, saw them coming and was panicking slightly, not knowing what to do. Suddenly, that panic disappeared, as he just stood up straight with a blank expression on his face. It was as if he was being controlled and showed no emotions. He took a few steps back to make room for the upcoming people that would soon be in front of him. Just as he expected, Tsunade, Kakashi, Shizune, Gaara, Temari, and Kankuro came out and stopped in front of him. All their eyes widened to see Naruto wearing an Akatsuki cloak, since they were hoping what the Raikage had told them was a lie. Naruto, Kakashi said. Well, it's like a reunion, isn't it? Naruto asked. Why Naruto? Tsunade asked. Why? That's a good question. I don't know why, but I feel like that I belong where I am now. You don't belong with the Akatsuki, you belong back home at the Leaf Village. Everyone misses you and I know that you do too. Tsunade replied. Naruto chuckled. You know what? I actually don't. I've completely forgotten about everyone and I could care less of what happens now. Why am I saying this? What the hell is happening to me? Naruto thought. Naruto, you know that whenever the Akatsuki gets a chance, they will take the 9 tails from you and you'll die. Gaara said. I don't care. Naruto hissed. There's no way that's Naruto. He's not the same sweet, kind, and hyperactive man anymore. Temari thought. Naruto reached into his cloak and pulled out a kunai, and there's no way I'm going back to the village. Even if you force me, I will not go back. He threw the kunai straight at Tsunade. Everyone was completely shocked to see that Naruto had attacked the Hokage. However, the kunai started to melt, which it fully melted just a foot away from ending Tsunade's life. Looks like I was right. Everyone turned to look at the doorway to see Mei standing there. Mei turned to face the Akatsuki boy. You. Naruto wondered. You're the 9-tailed brat, right? What is it of your concerns? I see. Mei walked past the leaf and sand ninja and stopped in front of them. Lava style. Lava wall. Lava started to form behind her on the floor and rise up. Wait, Mizukage, you can't take him on your own. Tsunade yelled. I'll be fine. Just then, the lava reached up to the ceiling and started to harden. Naruto turned around to see that he was trapped by another lava wall that had formed. It's such a shame that I have to kill such a handsome-looking young man. Mei said, as she her lips. Naruto chuckled. I think it's a shame to me actually that I have to kill such a sexy lady as yourself. Well, isn't that? She was cut off, as she felt his presence was now behind her. I mean, it's a shame that this perfect. Naruto placed his hand on her right thigh and started to rub up and down on it, body would be gone. He's fast, but what the hell is he doing? If he's that fast, he could have killed me by now. Unless, Mei then grinned seeing what the boy was up to and decided to play his little game. She lifted her arms up and folded them behind her head. So, since you could have killed me just now, am I thinking of what you're thinking? Naruto chuckled a bit. Mei turned to face the boy and had a seductive grin on her face. Is that why you put those walls up? He asked, as he kept continuing to rub her thigh. She placed a finger on his chest since his cloak was still torn up from the fight he had with B in the Raikage a week ago. It was kind of weird since they wouldn't give him a new one. She then pushed the boy up against the wall and pushed herself against him. She placed her hands on each of his shoulders and pushed herself against him more. So, is it true? Since you have the 9 tails in you, is it true that you have all that stamina? She asked. Naruto started to feel a little tipsy now due to the way his personality was changed for the short time. It was as if someone took over and pushed him back so he could have complete control. He shook his head and saw that he was pinned against a wall by a beautiful woman with auburn-colored hair. Who are you? He asked, as his face went beet red. Mei then had a confused look on her face. You don't know who I am? Well, all I know is that you're one of the cages. Mei just giggled slightly. I'm the Mizukage, Mei Terumi. Naruto looked around to see that it was just the two of them and that there was no way out. He was trapped with the Mizukage. So, what's with the sudden shyness? She asked, as she started making circle motions on his chest. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't see how you're a threat when you're just so cute. Naruto's face was now completely red. Enough talking. She took a step back and unzipped her dress and pulled her arms out from the sleeves of her dress. She then held her arms to the side, letting the dress slide down off on its own. When the dress was down to her feet, she kicked it aside and was now only wearing her fishnet top and bottom. Naruto's eyes shot wide open. What are you doing? He yelled, as he covered his eyes. Mei wouldn't allow him and pulled his hands away from his face. She then placed his hands on her. Naruto's eyes drifted down and stared at his hands. I want to have a little fun. I always had a thing for bad boys. She answered in a seductive tone and her lips. Naruto was completely in the back of his mind. He was just lost for words and couldn't think of anything to say to the Mizukage. Mei got tired of waiting and pressed herself against him and planted her lips on his. The blonde-haired boy's eyes shot wide open, not believing what was happening. The boy felt something being pressed against his lips and opened his mouth to try and say something, but Mei's tongue entered his mouth, which prevented him from saying anything. Mei pulled back slightly and slid her left hand down the boy's pants and gasped, "Oh, it looks like your friend's awake," she said, as a seductive smirk crept upon her face. Her eyes drifted down, as did Naruto's. The auburn beauty lowered herself, but when her head was leveled to his chest, she looked up at the boy and her lips. She sat down on her knees and reached up to grab the zipper on his cloak and slid it down. Once she brought it to the bottom, she removed his torn-up cloak and saw that he only had pants on underneath it. Naruto just couldn't believe his very eyes. Here, the Mizukage was about to have her way with him, and yet, he's a part of the Akatsuki. Am I Mizukage? Mei looked up at him and shook her head. Just call me Mei. she said and looked in front of her again, as she pulled the boy's pants down. Her eyes widened to see a massive tent in his boxers. Oh my, it seems big, she said, as she removed his boxers to see his hardened 9-inch rod and to reveal his completely body. Naruto's face was completely red. May, I can't. The Mizukage looked up at the boy with a confused look. And why's that? I'm your enemy and yet you're wanting to do this. May sighed and got back up to her feet. Listen here, Naruto, you might be Akatsuki, but deep down, I know that you don't have what it takes to betray your friends and your village. You're just afraid and don't know exactly what to do. Naruto was shocked, but he was also curious of how she knew exactly what he was feeling. Mizu. It's May, but I knew you were eavesdropping during our meeting and I could see how heartbroken the Hokage was when she had to agree that you had to be executed if seen. But, when she and her guards came out and even the Kazekage and his guards, they held back trying to convince you to come back. They just can't handle you being killed in front of them, because they still deeply care for you. Naruto was silent due to the loss of words, but May could see tears forming in the boy's eyes and she smiled slightly. Just go back home where you belong. Don't become an enemy to your village and friends, because all of you can't bear it. I know it. She just looked at the boy's face and could see a smile trying to form on his face. He looked the Mizukage eye to eye and smiled. Thank you, Mizu. I mean, May, he said, as he grabbed his pants, but May quickly took them from him and tossed them aside. He looked at her again to see a seductive smirk on her face. I'm not done with you yet, she said in a sexy tone. Naruto's eyes went wide again, as his face turned into a shade of red. May, I've never done this before. May's spirit brightened more hearing him say that and looked him in the eye. You're a virgin then? Naruto was embarrassed to answer, but just simply nodded. May grinned. Then I'll be giving you a fun time then. Location: Rain Village. Conan was sitting on her bed looking down at the floor. Who does he think he is? Judging me by what I'm forced to do. Her thoughts were interrupted due to a portal opening in front of her bed. She knew exactly who it was and shook her head to hide her feelings for now. Once the portal opened, Madara stepped out and looked at her. Conan, you and Nagato will go out and retrieve the 8 tails while the Raikage is busy at the cage summit. Conan sniffed and nodded in response, but Madara could see that she was hiding something. What did he do? He asked. Conan jumped a bit since he picked up right away. It's nothing. Madara tilted his head up a bit. Apparently it's not nothing if that boy hit a nerve in you. Conan sighed. He just said some words that hit me and made me go mad. So that's why I found him outside. No matter. He's at the cage summit right now. Conan's eyes widened, as she looked at Madara with a look that said, are you insane? Madara grinned behind his mask knowing he got her full attention. He probably got caught in a fight with one of the cages or, maybe, all of them. Conan's body was shaking, fearing that he probably won't manage long at all with all 5 cages at him. Yep, he's probably at his limit right now as we're speaking. Back with Naruto. May, I'm going to, come. The Mizukage kept bobbing her head back and forth with the boys going back to her throat every time. She gave him one last bob and felt his hot white fluids shoot down her throat. It just kept coming though, since it was Naruto's first time he had a lot stored and kept shooting his load into the Mizukage's mouth. She kept swallowing all of it, but some of it managed to leak from her mouth and slide down the corner of her lips. Finally, Naruto shot out the rest he had, as May took him out of her. She around her lips to swallow whatever else was left. Naruto started to slide down the wall after feeling how amazing he felt receiving a blowjob from the Mizukage. He then landed on his bum with his legs straight out. He leaned his head up against the wall and looked up at the ceiling, while taking a few deep breaths. May crawled up to him and placed her legs on each side of his thighs and was positioned just a little past his still hardened rod. She pulled him toward her and instantly wrapped her arms around his neck and started to kiss him wildly. Naruto was starting to get it now and wrapped his arms around her waist. Mei forced her tongue into the boy's mouth to end up meeting with his own, and the two began to have a battle for dominance. Mei grinned, while still having a wild kiss with the boy, glad to see that he's actually going with it now. Mei retreated one of her arms and reached for a kunai that was in the boy's cloak that was lying next to them and brought the kunai to her. She pulled back a bit, breaking the kiss, and brought the kunai up in between them. Naruto's eyes widened, not believing he felt for this, as Mei lifted the kunai up a bit. He closed his eyes and turned his head to the side, preparing for the attack. However, that never happened. What are you acting afraid of? She asked. Naruto opened his eyes and turned back to face her and see that instead of being attacked, he saw that she had cut her remaining clothing down in half to reveal her beautiful, smooth, silky, white body. The poor blonde-haired boy could feel a rush coming from his nose and knew that he wouldn't be able to hold it much longer since he was looking at a goddess completely. What's the matter? Can you not believe what's in front of your eyes? She asked, with a seductive smirk on her face. Naruto's eyes were just examining up and down her body, but then when he saw her, he just stared at them. Mei just giggled at the boy and wrapped her arms around his neck once again to plant her lips on his. Naruto now was starting to slowly see what was about to happen, so he wrapped his arms around the Mizukage's waist and pulled her closer to him to deepen the kiss. Mei pulled herself away from him and gave him a serious look. I think it's your turn to pleasure me, she said in a seductive tone, as she got off him and laid down on her back with her legs slightly spread apart. Naruto remained like he was and just stared at her. Mei slightly lifted her head up and placed her pointy finger on her chin, while giving him an innocent look. Mei, I've told you that I never done this before and don't know what to do. She remained like she was and just continued looking at him with the same look. It's okay, Naruto, I'm here basically giving my body to you. So, do what you want with me. Naruto leaned himself up and crawled toward her and ended up eye to eye level with him on top of her. He just kept staring at her, but Mei got a little impatient and instantly wrapped her arms around his neck and pulled him down to force his lips onto hers. They shared once again another deep, passionate kiss. That was until Naruto started kissing her bottom lip, then to her chin, and continued his way down her body. Mei leaned her head back and closed her eyes. Naruto continued on, but instantly stopped just above her. He looked up at her, then back down at her, as he leaned down and gently started on her left tit. Mei let out a soft moan, which gave the signal to Naruto that he was doing okay for now. He smiled a bit, as he brought his right hand up and grabbed her right tit and began to gently massage it. Naruto, that feels so good. Mei moaned out. Naruto then started to gently nibble on her erected nipple, while still massaging the other one. Mei arched her back slightly and let out small moans from the boy's teasing. The blonde-haired boy then started her erected nipple around with his tongue. Mei then let out a slightly louder moan, but then leaned her head up a bit to look at him. Stop the teasing. Naruto took her nipple out of his mouth and looked up at her. Sorry, he replied, as he kissed her chest and continued his path down her body. Mei laid her head back down and brought her arms up to lie just above her head. Naruto then came to an end for his path since he found what he was looking for. Mei shot her arms out and grabbed the boy by his hair. Naruto then started to groan a bit due to the fact that she started to pull his hair. He wouldn't let that stop him though, as he plunged his tongue in deeper, causing her to moan even louder. With another thing in mind, he inserted 2 of his fingers into her and went in and out of her at a slow pace. Oh, Naruto, go faster. A little, Konan, what are? Shut up. Naruto's body just jumped slightly due to how frustrated she sounded. Konan, what's wrong? I said shut up. Pain wants you back at base now. Naruto sighed and walked towards her, while Konan just watched him with a sickening look. Naruto then stopped next to her, while she pulled out one of Madara's teleporting sheets. Shortly after, the 2 of them vanished in a flash of light. Mei just stood there feeling satisfied that she now caused a little problem with Naruto and the Akatsuki. Now that should make him make an easy choice for him to leave them sooner. She grinned. Location: Rain Village. Main base. A bright flash of light appeared for a quick second and then faded away to reveal Naruto and a frustrated Konan. It's about time. The two of them turned around to see Pain standing there. Sorry, I ended up going through almost the entire building and then I found him making out with the Mizukage. Pain's eyebrow raised with questioning and then looked at Naruto. What happened? He asked. Naruto sighed and couldn't find himself holding back to tell them exactly what happened. Well, when she found us too, we just happened to finish having. Conan's eyes twitched and immediately looked at him with an even angrier look, as Pain just stood there shocked. Konan grabbed Naruto by the collar of his cloak with her hands and got all up in his face with anger. You what? She yelled. Naruto looked her in the eyes and he could have sworn he saw fire in her eyes. I mean, we had. Konan let go of the boy and slapped him hard across his face, which caused him to turn to face the other side due to the hard impact. She then turned to Pain. Is he going to get away with that? Pain shrugged. I don't see anything wrong with that, but what did you hear from the meeting, Naruto? Konan couldn't believe what she just heard. Naruto then rubbed his cheek and turned to face Pain. They announced that if I was seen, I was to be killed on sight. Konan then looked at the boy. Yeah, the Raikage sounded frustrated since I was the one who tried to capture the 8 tails and of course he was the first to blurt out and agree with me being killed if spotted. I see. Well, then we need to put you into some training. Pain said. Naruto had a confused look at first. Wait, how come you're acting all nice now? Don't worry about it, he replied. Konan however was curious of this too. She thought that Pain hated Naruto. Now she was curious if when she was gone that there was a sudden change amongst him. We have a special room just below this base to where we like to train ourselves in. You will be going in there for a couple of years. Naruto's eyes widened. A couple of years? Why so long? Even Konan had to agree with Naruto there. Because, while you're down there, you need to lose your emotions for your village and all your friends. Forget about them, because when you end up fighting them, you won't have to worry about holding back. Naruto was speechless. If you don't, then they'll just kill you without hesitating. Naruto looked down at the ground and was afraid that Pain was right. Pain and Konan kept looking at the boy. There's supplies down there for everything you'll need. Weapons, food, drinks, all that stuff. However though, I set up a few preparations for you. Naruto finally looked back up at Pain wondering what it was. It's something you'll have to see for yourself. Naruto sighed. Okay then. You won't be coming out of there for 2 years, no breaks, no nothing. Is that clear? Naruto turned his gaze elsewhere. I understand. Good. Konan will escort you there. Konan looked at her leader. Why me? Why can't you do it? I got something to do. Pain answered, as he walked away from the two. Konan groaned and turned to walk toward the training area, while Naruto followed behind. The walk was quiet and awkward at the same time. Konan didn't want to hear anything from the boy due to how angry she was at him. Naruto wanted to say something, but he knew better since he didn't want to piss her off even more. Konan stopped, which caused Naruto as well. Naruto was confused. He looked around the area and didn't see how this could be the training area. It was a small room with only a chair and that was it. Here, she pointed at the hatch that was in front of her. Naruto then looked and saw what she was talking about. In there is where you'll be training for the next 2 years. She grabbed the handle and pulled it open to reveal a stairway that led down below. Naruto looked down and couldn't see a thing due to how dark it was, except for the stairs. Well, see you in 2 years. Naruto turned around to face her, but was pushed into the hatch, while Konan closed it and locked him in. She then made sure it was locked and once she verified that it was, she left. Inside the hatch, Naruto sighed and walked down the stairs. Man, there has to be a light switch somewhere. He separated his arms and placed his hands on each wall, as he kept walking down the stairs. Once he took his last step, it was flat from there on, but he felt a switch next to his right hand. With a flip of the switch, lights came on to reveal the room. Naruto stood there in shock. It was huge, but it was just an empty room. However, when he turned his gaze to the side, he saw a doorway that led into another room. He walked over to the room and inside was only a kitchen. So this is what's going to keep me alive for 2 years, huh? Yes. Naruto instantly turned around and saw no one in the kitchen with him. He quickly ran out of there, and when he did, the big empty room was not so empty anymore. The scenery changed into a battlefield with rocks and pillars everywhere. Who's there? He shouted. Naruto, I'm afraid you're coming back to the village with me. Suddenly, Kakashi appeared right in front of him. What? Kakashi-sensei, how? However, something was strange though. Naruto looked at his eyes to see that they were purple with a hint of red. Kakashi-sensei, no more talking, Kakashi said, as he charged right at Naruto with a lightning blade already fully charged. Wait, Kakashi-sensei. Kakashi ignored the boy and swung his lightning blade at him, but Naruto easily dodged it. Followed after that, Kakashi started to send a series of punches and kicks with incredible speed. Kakashi-sensei, wait a second. Once again, he ignored the boy's cry and kept on. Naruto was actually having trouble dodging them all and knew he wouldn't be able to keep this up. Then it hit him. Naruto messed up by moving the wrong way and received a kick to the ribs. He was sent to a knee holding onto himself. Kakashi-sensei, please. Of course, he didn't listen to the boy's plead and kicked the boy again, but this time he kicked him toward the kidney area. Naruto, you're coming back. Plus, someone has something to say to you. Kakashi turned so that Naruto could see who was coming from behind his sensei. The boy's eyes widened. Naruto, why? Sakura, why did you leave Naruto? Why? She asked, as she approached him and knelt down in front of him. Fom. Naruto was sent flying back and crashed into a giant rock. The boy came out and stood in the crater that was made due to his impact. He looked to see Sakura and Kakashi just standing there. What the hell is going on? Suddenly, Sakura appeared right in front of him. What the hell? When did you? Sakura shot a straightforward punch, but Naruto on the nick of time jumped out from the crater and dodged it. He landed on the ground, but now he was surrounded. Kakashi was behind him, while Sakura was in front. What the hell is going on? Look, Naruto, we had orders to kill you, but we're wanting to bring you back to the village instead. Kakashi said, I already told you a while back that I couldn't go back. Then we have no choice but to kill you. He replied, as him and Sakura closed in on him. Why is this happening? I don't understand. Naruto then snapped out of himself and quickly grabbed Sakura by her foot and threw her at Kakashi, which made her collide against him and pushed them back. Kakashi stopped the both of them and got her off him, as they stood their ground. Naruto was standing where he was and kept his gaze to the ground. If you two have seeped that low, then I have no choice. Kakashi then charged at the boy once again and sent series of punches and kicks at him again, but Naruto easily dodged them this time. Naruto then grabbed Kakashi's fist and pulled him towards him. He then kneed his sensei in his gut, followed by a kick to the chest, which sent him flying back. This must be what pain meant. I must not hold back or it'll cost me my life, he said to himself. He looked back at Kakashi and Sakura and saw that they were closing in on him. Well, he's right. He charged after them as well. Back in the base, Conan was walking with pain, trying to erase any thought of a certain blonde-haired boy. Conan. She shook her head and looked at her leader. Yes. That boy, he's going to end up being the one to take my place one day. Conan's eyes widened. What? It's something just came through my mind when the boy was at the cage summit. I know it seems strange, but I pictured him taking my place when I die. Why would you think that? It's just something that I'm not even sure of, but remember, he's still young and he's an Uzumaki after all. He has yet to awaken his true power. Oh yeah, I almost forgot about that. She sighed and looked down at the ground, as the two kept walking. You know, if it does go to that, you should follow him like you have been with me. No, Conan, I know you hate him now, but just think about it. When I'm gone and it's just you, while he may take my place, what are you going to do? Are you going to run from him and be on your own? Who knows what will happen to you if you do? Or, will you stay with him and remain safe? Conan gave Pain a disappointed look. What? You don't think I can take care of myself? Conan, if you go on your own, you're sure to be found and you might be killed in an instant. It might be more than likely ninja from Konoha. But, if you stayed with the boy, I'm sure he's wanting to protect you with all his will. Conan sighed. I can't promise what my decision will be. Pain sighed as well. Whatever you do, just promise me you'll be fine. Conan then looked back at him and gave him a small smile. I will. Location: Konoha Village. Lady Tsunade. Shizune called out. The busted Hokage looked up at her assistant. What is it? I think you need to take a look at this, she said, as she handed her a book. Tsunade's eyes widened. A bingo book? She asked, as she scanned the pages. Shizune was scared of what was to come from the Hokage once she saw what she has seen. Why did you bring me? Tsunade stopped once she reached a certain page that she hasn't seen yet, until now. There was nothing but silence roaming the room, while Shizune had a couple of sweat drops sliding down her forehead. Tsunade kept staring at the page and didn't like it one bit. Name: Naruto Uzumaki. Age: 18. Status: former genin of Konoha. Reward: 50 million ryo. Wanted: dead or alive. Information on bounty: wanted for leaving his village and becoming a member of the Akatsuki. Skills: ninjutsu and some taijutsu. Other information: high wind jutsu and has mastered using sage mode. Has incredible chakra and can heal incredibly fast due to the kyubi. Rank: S. Approach with caution. Tsunade couldn't believe it. It hasn't even been that long and they already have him in the bingo book. Shizune, take this away from me. Yes, my lady, she replied and grabbed the book. Please, inform everyone that doesn't know about it. Yes, my lady, she answered, as she walked out of the office. When she turned around to leave, she saw Sakura coming up to her. Hey Shizune, she greeted. Hey there Sakura, she said in a rather soft voice. Sakura then realized something was off and that's when she saw the book that she was carrying. Shizune, what is that? She pointed at the book. Shizune looked at it and held it up in between them, the bingo book. Why are you carrying that around? Shizune then opened to marked page in the book and held it up so Sakura could see. Once the pink-haired medic saw it, she too went completely silent. Sakura then began to shiver, not believing it as well. Her old teammate in fact was now a wanted criminal. Why? What did he do to get added in the book? The pink-haired medic asked, as tears began to form in her eyes. He tried capturing the 8 tails for the Akatsuki. Sakura's eyes widened. Naruto. He wouldn't do anything like that. I'm sorry Sakura, but he did. Sakura turned around and ran back, making her way out of the building, leaving a trail of tears behind. She was truly heartbroken. First, Sasuke was the one to leave them long ago to seek power from Orochimaru, and now, Naruto left them for the Akatsuki in order to protect everyone he cared about. Just on top of that, both her teammates were now wanted criminals. It was very hurtful to her since they've been teammates ever since the academy and now, they're all on their own now. She then opened the door to step outside and continued her walk. Hey Sakura. The pink-haired medic looked to her right to see Tenten, Neji, Hinata, and Lee. She tried to hide her emotions after hearing and seeing what happened, but she couldn't. Tenten tilted her head a bit. What's wrong Sakura? Sakura wiped her tears away and managed to hold herself up to speak. Well, you know how Naruto left for the Akatsuki. Everyone stiffened a bit. Yes. They all replied. Well, I was about to go see Lady Tsunade until Shizune came out of her office with a book. The book wasn't just a book, it was a bingo book. Everyone's eyes widened, hoping what they're thinking isn't true. Yeah, well, Shizune showed me someone that was just added to the book and it was Naruto. Everyone gasped. What? Why so soon? Tenten asked. I don't even know. Sakura answered. Why would they add him to the book though? He hasn't done anything wrong yet. Neji asked. Sakura sniffed and wiped another set of tears sliding down her cheeks. He tried to capture the 8 tails for the Akatsuki. Everyone went wide-eyed, not believing what they heard. Naruto did. Isn't he a Jinchuriki himself? Tenten asked. Yes. Then why would he try to capture someone else that has one too? I thought he always wanted to protect them. That's what I thought too. Why would Naruto-kun even do such a thing? His power of youth has gone wrong. Lee said. We don't know, but since he did such a thing, Akatsuki probably made him do it. Neji sighed. We need to bring him back. I agree with Neji. Hinata said. Sakura was having terrible thoughts going through her mind and she looked down at the ground. First Sasuke and now, her tears fell off her cheek and hit the floor. And now Naruto, she finally finished. Tenten walked over to her friend and hugged her. You know we'll help bring him back no matter what. After all, he was always there for us and saved all of us from situations. Tenten's right. We will all help Naruto's youth shine bright once again. Lee shouted. Sakura looked at Neji and Hinata and saw them both smiling. You know our answer. Neji said. Sakura smiled and returned Tenten's hug, feeling slightly better knowing that her friends would help bring back Naruto. Location. Unknown. Sasuke was standing outside a cave and watched the waterfall that was nearby him. He was feeling his usual self, which was nothing for now. The air in front of him started to spin and he knew damn well what it was. Just seconds later, it opened to reveal Madara coming out. Sasuke. What is it? There has been a lot of recent activity. 1. Pain has an apprentice. Who is it? I can't tell you that, yet. But, his apprentice failed to capture the 8 tails on his own. Sasuke chuckled, already imagining that this apprentice of Pain's is weak, which is why you and your team will go after the 8 tails and capture him. Sasuke then gave Madara a serious look. Not now though, so relax. It's whenever you want. Basically you keep attempting to catch it no matter how many times you fail. You just better catch it. HMPH. You don't need to worry, I'm sure we can catch it without a problem. Aren't you very confident about this? Let me fill you in on a little something. Pain's apprentice is actually stronger than you and is getting even stronger as we speak. Sasuke's eyes widened, but his body was flowing with anger. Yeah, he did fail to capture the 8 tails, but that was because the Raikage came to aid him, which was too much for Pain's apprentice. Sasuke grabbed the hilt of his sword, but he didn't unsheath it. Madara looked down to see that Sasuke was ready to kill someone or something. Now, just calm down. His apprentice is actually training somewhere and can't stop for 2 years. You got plenty of time to catch up to him or whatever you choose. Sasuke gritted his teeth slightly, then thought of something. Do you still have Itachi's eyes? Madara grinned behind his mask. Yes. I want his eyes. Sasuke said. It's about time. Time skip. A year later. Location. Rain Village. Pain was standing at the top of the base looking down at his village, as the rain kept pouring like always. Footsteps were heard coming from behind him and he knew who it was exactly. What is it, Conan? Nothing really. Just thought I would come up and check on you. I see. Awkward silence fell before them till Conan realized that something was strange about him. What's wrong? Pain turned around to face her with a serious look. Madara told him. Conan gave him a confused look. Told who? Madara told Sasuke about the boy. Conan's eyes widened. What? Now just wait a minute, he didn't tell Sasuke that it was Naruto. He just told him that I had an apprentice. But still, now Sasuke's going to want to see who your apprentice is, and once he finds out who it is, he's going to want to kill him. Actually, they'll just end up killing each other. But yeah, we need to make sure we don't allow them to see each other. I understand. Pain turned back around and looked down at his village again. Just one more year until that boy comes out as a different person. Well, at least he better be. Location: Konoha. Tsunade was sitting in her office with Neji, Sakura, Tenten, and Lee standing in front of her desk. Lady Tsunade, we were unable to find him once again, Sakura said. Tsunade took a deep breath and slammed her fists on her desk. It's been a year and we still can't find him, she shouted. Everyone jumped slightly from her outburst. We're sorry, my lady, Sakura said. The busted Hokage slammed her fists on her desk once again. We don't have much time. They only have to capture the 8 tails and then they'll be complete since they already have Naruto in the palm of their hands. We know, Lady Hokage. We're trying our best to find him too, Neji said. Wait a second. The Hokage gave it a quick thought. There's one other place that we haven't checked. What is it? Sakura asked. The Rain Village. Wait, how could we even get there? It's incredibly hard to infiltrate, Neji said. I don't even know how. Everyone sighed. I guess, we have no other choice but to wait for when he comes out for a mission or something, Neji mentioned. Yep. That's all we can do for now. You're all dismissed. They nodded, as they left the office disappointed that they wouldn't be able to do anything unless Naruto was out of the Rain Village. The gang walked out of the Hokage's office and made their way down to the exit. What are we going to do? Sakura asked. You heard the Hokage. There's nothing we can do, Neji answered. It's been a year and we still can't find him, nor did we hear any news from anyone from different villages about his appearance. Tears started to form in Sakura's eyes. What if he really is gone? What if they killed him? They looked at Sakura feeling terrible now. It was silent now since no one had anything to say. What's going on here? Everyone turned to the source of the voice to see Kakashi. Kakashi-sensei. What are you doing here? Sakura asked, as she wiped her tears away. I came here to deliver the news to Tsunade about Naruto. Everyone's eyes widened. What's wrong with Naruto? And how do you know where he is? Sakura asked. Kakashi scratched the back of his head. Well, I ended up running into someone that's in the Akatsuki. However, he willingly told me about Naruto before I could even ask him myself. He told me that Naruto's working as an apprentice for another member of the Akatsuki. But, the guy that told me this has Sasuke as his own apprentice. Sasuke? Lee asked. Yes, I can't tell you the name of the Akatsuki guy that I talked with until I verify with the Hokage first. Everyone nodded, as Kakashi continued his way to the Hokage's office. Once he was out of sight, the gang looked at one another and then dashed off back toward the office. Shortly after, the gang found themselves at the slightly opened door and hid their chakras so that they wouldn't be spotted. They all closed in and listened in closely. Lord Hokage, I came to discuss about the news of Naruto. What is it? Well, I did run in on one of the members of the Akatsuki. It turned out he was telling me everything about Naruto before I could even ask. However, though, this Akatsuki guy is named, he stopped since he knew that this was terrible news and that there would be a big fuss over it. Well, what's his name? His name is Madara Uchiha. The gang outside the door went wide-eyed after what they just heard, but, I thought, Madara was dead. Lee whispered. Tsunade was completely speechless. Anyway, Lord Hokage, he told me that Naruto is alive and is serving under the Akatsuki member that captured him as an apprentice. Also, Madara has an apprentice of his own and it's Sasuke. Then it came to her, what? If those two see each other, it's not going to go well at all. Kakashi nodded. I know, that's why as soon as Naruto comes out of the Rain Village, we need to bring him back quickly. Very well, I will inform the other cages. You're dismissed. Kakashi nodded and walked to the door. The gang decided to remain put, but they backed up a bit to allow Kakashi some room when he steps out. Just as he stepped out the office, he saw that the gang was standing there with serious expressions on their faces. Kakashi sighed. I knew you all would listen in. Kakashi-sensei, do you know any way that we can get into the Rain Village? Sakura asked. I don't sadly. The only person that I'm aware of that found a way was Jiraiya. There has to be another way in. She shouted. I'm afraid there isn't. Kakashi replied and walked past them to make his way out of the building. Tenten hugged her good friend Sakura to keep her from getting hurt again. Don't worry, Sakura, I'm sure he'll come back once he sees his friends wanting him back. She smiled. Sakura returned the hug. I really hope so. Time skip. 1 year later. Location. Rain Village. Pain and Conan were making their way to the hatch where Naruto's been training. It was mostly quiet when they were walking since they were kind of wondering if he had changed like they were hoping for. Conan. The blue-haired woman looked over at Pain. Yes. When we see him, I want you to control that anger of yours. Conan jumped a bit. I don't know what you're talking about. She lied. They arrived at the hatch shortly, but Pain turned around to face Conan. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You're still mad at him because you were really jealous when you found out that he had with the Mizukage and not you. Conan blushed furiously. I wasn't jealous. Pain raised an eyebrow and just kept looking at her. Then tell me, if you were mad, why were you mad at him anyway? Conan raised her arm to answer, but she couldn't find what she was looking for to say. Pain grinned slightly knowing that he knew that deep down Conan had something for the boy. He turned around and grabbed the handle of the hatch. It's time for him to come out. After a few of the locks came unlocked, the hatch door opened, as Pain and Conan took a few steps back. They couldn't see anything due to how dark it was and couldn't hear any footsteps or anything. Naruto. Pain called out. There was still no sound coming from within. Naruto. Pain called out once again. Once again, there was nothing to be heard. Just as Pain and Conan were about to go in to see what was going on, they heard footsteps. They remained where they were and then they saw him. Their eyes widened. They were looking at a much taller Naruto and his blonde spiky hair was a tad bit longer. Look at my profile picture for his look. Naruto, how do you feel? Pain asked. Naruto now fully stepped out of the hatchet to reveal himself so they could see well. The two went wide-eyed once more once they saw that he was pretty much covered in blood. What happened? Conan asked, as she rushed to him. Pain was shocked by her change in mood all of a sudden and grinned. Conan quickly put her arm around Naruto's shoulders trying to give him support. Naruto looked at Conan. What are you doing? Conan looked up at Naruto. I'm helping you. I don't need any help. He quickly withdrew himself from her and kept his distance from her. Conan looked at him not believing what he just did. Naruto, what happened? Pain asked. Naruto turned to face Pain. Well, the last fight I had turned out to be going against Pervy Sage. I kind of let my guard down and it cost me pretty badly. Pervy Sage? Who's that? That's what I used to call my sensei. His name was Jiraiya. Pain and Conan's eyes widened. Jiraiya. He was our teacher as well when we were younger. Naruto just stood there showing no sense of emotion. Pain just kept looking at the new Naruto and smiled. So, I see your training went well. Naruto grinned. Of course. I see. Well, I'll let you have today and tomorrow to take a break. Once you feel refreshed and all cleaned up, I'll give you your first mission. Naruto nodded and walked past them, as Pain and Conan turned to watch him leave. Conan then looked at Pain once Naruto was out of sight. He's completely different. Pain smiled. Yep, just exactly how he should be. But, if he remains like that, what if he decides to ignore us and turn on us? He won't, I can promise you that. I've been thinking though. Conan looked at him curious of what it was. I've been thinking about keeping him with us rather than taking the Jinchuriki and letting him die. I rather have him as a fellow teammate and it's best we do since Madara has other things planned that might not end up too good for all of us. Conan was shocked, hearing that Pain wanted to keep the boy alive instead of having him killed. What's with the big change? I don't know. I think since we're the only 3 of Jiraiya's students that are still alive, we should just remain like this. Conan smiled softly. I thought you would never come forth with that. Well, it can't be all that bad. He said. Conan kept her smile on liking the change of him. thank you," she said, as she ran after for Naruto. All he should care about is everyone that lives in this village and him, of course. Everyone he knew from Konoha shouldn't be any problem for him to kill if needed. Pain said to himself. Somewhere in the streets of the Rain Village, Naruto was walking with his hands deep in his cloak's pockets. The rain started soaking his hair and slightly covered his face. The rain also managed to wash off the blood that was on him. He started to walk by a few shops all aligned with one another. The first one he saw was a ramen shop, but he knew damn well that it wouldn't be the same as Ichiraku's. He continued his walk and the next shop he saw was a dumpling one. Seeing how all he ate was ramen, he decided to try something new and walked into the shop. "Hi and welcome. You may choose anywhere to sit," the woman behind the counter said, as she slightly blushed seeing Naruto. The girl had beautiful long black hair that went down to her lung section. She was wearing a black skirt that hovered just a bit over her knees and she also wore a black ruffle neck blouse. She wore a silver bracelet that had little patterns of waves on it. "Thank you," he replied. Examining the place, he saw that it wasn't very big. It had 2 sections with 6 booth tables in each section. Then, to the other side was a bar where there was a group of 6 guys drinking and messing around with one another. He blinked once and walked over to a booth that was in the second section and chose the one at the far back. "Hello, what would you like?" He looked up to see that it was the same girl he saw at the counter. "Hi, can I just get some water for now?" "Why yes," she answered, as she placed a menu down on the table for him and then headed to the back to get what he asked for. He looked at the menu and scanned through all what kind of dumplings they had. The sound of broken glass came from the bar, as he looked over to see what was going on. He saw that the same group of guys taking glasses from the bar and he also realized that the same girl was there. He saw that one of the guys grabbed her and pinned her against the bar. The guy then pressed himself against the waitress and started groping her. Naruto had about enough and got up from his seat and walked over to the group. The other guys saw the boy coming up to them and went up to him to keep him from walking any further. The guy that was nearly in front of his face looked and saw that he was wearing the Akatsuki cloak, then looked back up at the boy. "So, you're one of those like our leader of this village. How come I've never seen you before?" Naruto just stood there looking at the man, as the guy that had the waitress pinned turned to face his group and the boy as well. Still no answer came from him and now the guy was starting to get annoyed, as he grabbed Naruto by the collar of his cloak. "You must be a fake then," he said, as a grin crept upon the man's face. He tossed Naruto over to the bar to end up being surrounded by the rest of the gang. However, Naruto showed no sign of fear or anything else. "Okay brat, have it your way then." The guy punched straight forward and made contact against Naruto's gut. Then he sent an uppercut and made contact with his jaw, then a hook shot right across the lower area of his left eye, which instantly swelled up. The waitress gasped, "Leave him alone," she screamed. The man retrieved his hands back and looked at the boy. "Had enough?" Naruto just stood there still showing no sign at all. "Apparently you want some more then." The guy then sent a punch straight toward his nose, but Naruto instantly caught the man's fist. "I've had enough of your attitude," Naruto said, as he squeezed the man's fist, causing the guy to yell in pain and then kicked the man in the gut, which made him go flying against one of the booths that were at a good distance behind him. The rest of the gang looked at their friend that was just sent crashing into one of the booths, then looked back at the boy. "You're going to regret that, boy." The rest of the gang then all charged in after him. Naruto then elbowed the man that was coming up behind him and then grabbed a hold of him just to end up tossing him into the guy that was coming up from in front of him, as the two of them went crashing to the guy that was slammed against the booth earlier. 2 of the guys grabbed a hold of Naruto's arms and held them up, while the last remaining guy came up to him in front of him. "You should have stayed out of it, brat." He then sent continuous punches to his gut, followed up by a punch that landed against his left cheek, which also swelled up. "Had enough?" Naruto blinked and grinned. "Is that it?" He then retrieved his arms from the two men that had a hold of them and grabbed both of them by their necks. He then tossed the two of them at the guy that was in front of him and caused them both to collapse on top of one another. He turned to see the waitress standing where she was still against the bar, but she grabbed a damp rag and walked over to him. "Are you all right?" she asked, as she patted the swelled up spot below his eye. He looked down at her to see her relieved face. "Yes, but are you okay?" The waitress blushed. "Yes, thank you," she answered, as she continued to lightly pat his sore spot. "Are you all right, hun?" The waitress and Naruto looked toward the source of the voice coming from behind the bar to see an old man. "Yes, Dad." She then turned back to face Naruto. "This man saved me." The old man looked over at Naruto, in which he also remained looking at the old man. It was really fishy to him at first, but then he remembered of whom these two reminded him. A picture of Tsuki and Ayame flashed in his mind and then vanished. However, he showed no sign of caring and just remained like he was. "Thank you for protecting my daughter," the old man said. Naruto scratched the back of his head and had a small smile. Naruto was cut off when he felt a little sharp pain coming from his back. The waitress gasped, as the old man was frightened. Naruto turned his head and looked from the corner of his eye to see that it was the guy that was groping the waitress earlier who had just stabbed him in the back with a knife. "Is that it?" Naruto asked the man, as the guy went wide-eyed not believing that it did nothing. The man let go and backed away from him. Naruto sighed. "It's your choice." However, before he could turn around, the man fell down unconscious. Naruto turned around to see that Konan had just knocked him out. Naruto had a confused look on his face as of why would she be here, Konan? "What are you doing here?" "I came here to check on you and here I see that you already got in a mess." She walked up to him and motioned for him to turn around, which he did. She removed the knife quickly from his back. Naruto's body stiffened due to the minor sharp pain coming from it. "Ouch," he said in a normal tone. "You need to be careful next time," she said, as Naruto turned around to face her. "I think I can take care of myself." Konan started to get a little frustrated, but she couldn't find anything to say. Naruto turned his back to her and faced the waitress. "Is it okay if I can get?" Konan cut in between the two and had just slapped him across his face, which caused him to look to his side. "Ever since you came out of your training, you've been a complete. You need to get rid of this selfish act of yourself and just be your normal self." Naruto rubbed his cheek and turned to look at Konan eye to eye. "I am my normal self. I don't see how you can't see it, but if you haven't figured out why I'm acting like this toward you only, then it's your fault. I'm acting like this to you because the way you treated me after that little incident 2 years ago. I got tired of how you kept treating me like that after I even tried multiple times trying to say that I was sorry, but no, it didn't work. That's why I'm acting like this toward you and if you can't accept it, then start accepting it, cause it's not going to change." Konan was shocked and yet slightly scared for a bit after hearing what he told her. Naruto then looked over Konan's shoulder to look at the waitress. "I'm sorry, I'll come again some other time." He turned his back to them and walked out of the shop and entered the street once again. Okay. She smiled slightly disappointed that he left. Konan was hurt now realizing that he was right. She sighed and looked over at the thugs, as she formed a giant mat-size sheet of paper below the still passed out men. "I'll take care of these guys for you too," she said. She walked out of the shop with the giant sheet of paper with the guys on them following behind her. Once she stepped out, she saw Naruto on her right a few yards away from her. She saw that he was talking to someone that was trying to bring him into the alley. She was curious of who the person was or whatever it could be since she couldn't quite see. Shortly though, Naruto walked into the alley and then that gave Konan the sign to follow him. Once she got to where Naruto once was when she saw him, she peeked around the corner to see that Naruto was talking to someone and couldn't tell who it was still. She remained in her position and listened in on them. "You do understand, right?" the person asked. Naruto nodded. "When should I go then?" I'll take you there now, but remember, you need to wait till Danzo's alone and then you can make your move. Fine. Danzo. That means, Conan now saw that the two of them were both gone. Her eyes widened now knowing who the person was. She quickly put the still passed out thugs into the alley and vanished in sheets of paper to go find Pain. Back at the base, Pain was standing on the rooftop looking down at his village enjoying how peaceful it looked. The sound of paper being scattered around was heard behind him and he turned around to see Conan. What is it? He asked. Madara was just here. He was. What was he doing? He took Naruto. Pain's body jumped a bit. He what? Where is he? I think he sent Naruto to Konoha to kill Danzo. Damn it. We need to go aid him. He won't be able to manage on his own. Let's go. The two of them ran back inside getting preparations needed for the attack on the leaf. Location: Konoha Forest. Naruto was standing on top of a tree looking at his old village, which was a good distance from him. Well, things might just get a bit messy, but I have my order. If other ninjas jump in, you have no choice but to take them out if they stand in your way. So, your emotions shouldn't hold you back, that's why you were locked in a hatch for your training. Like I said, if anyone else stands in your way, kill them. Naruto sighed. Well, it's most likely that the Leaf Village won't be much of a village anymore.